Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
I would like you all to give a warm welcome to our main speaker tonight, Barbara.
Hi, my name is Barbara. I'm an alcoholic. Can't you tell I'm an alcoholic? I got a whiskey voice. Actually, it's just like 5 days, from the laryngitis thing that happened. I didn't like it then because I couldn't talk. It's really a drag when an alcoholic woman can't talk, But as my voice began to come back, it was really great because it's like, I feel like I could sing in a bar, really good blues, Like our friend Debbie O, I am an alcoholic woman. I'm so glad to be here at this meeting this evening. Gosh, just to let you know, I loved booze. I loved booze. First time I ever drank it, was a beer. It was my dad's beer. He had 6 in the refrigerator. My father and I lived together when I was in high school, and true to alcoholic form, we'd have like ice cubes and maybe ketchup, and pickle relish, and maybe a package of hot dogs or something, and then I would have my Diet Cokes, bunches 6 in a row, and he would have his beers, and they would be in the side compartment of the refrigerator. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And he had a little thing that he'd do. He'd sit and he'd watch the news and he'd drink 3 of them, and then he'd go to the bar for a few hours, and then he'd come back and he'd think. We love to think as alcoholics. He'd think about profound, intense, deep, longing, lonely things. And as he did that, he would drink the other 3. Well, one night he came home and there was only 2 in the refrigerator. Stomp, 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 stomp. He called me Joe, because that's my middle name. I think he wanted a boy. And but when he got mad at me, he called me George. Or another thing he called me was Newt. I mean, maybe for Newt Rockney or something like that. I don't know, but boy, when I got the George front and center, or Newt, get over here, it was like, I knew I was in trouble, right? Said, what happened to that beer? Well, my first drink, I got to lie. I said, well, Dad, there's this thing that you do with your hair. You set your hair with beer. Some of us women in our 40s and 50s can remember when that was the in thing to do. Of course, you ended up having kind of smelly hair, but it was very good, setting stuff. So I said, well, I was setting my hair with beer, which of course I wasn't doing. I drank the damn thing, But he said, you're grounded for 2 weeks. The problem was my father was grounding me all the time. So by the time I left home at 18, I was grounded for 2 years. I had all this time to do before I left. I just, in true alcoholic style, as you might have gathered, he probably was an alcoholic as well. And I was budding, and we both had this streak in us, which was that real stubborn kind of streak. So it was like 2 bulldogs looking at each other, trying to get the same, piece of cloth, like that. And so one day I was just in my nightgown, and he told me one too many things to do was actually in the morning. And I went I'm out of here. And I threw my key on the coffee table, which is where he did a great deal of his wonderful drinking at night. And he's getting his coffee the next morning. This was, had a little teacup. He didn't have a big mug. It was this little teacup in a saucer. Can you imagine? With nerves like this. It was like a soap opera, watching him get from the table up to his mouth. You know, it was like, oh my God, what kind of drama is going to happen here? Then finally he'd get it up there without spilling a drop. It's so, we are amazing, so amazing. So I threw my key down on that same table and walked out. You know, I'm leaving. And then I just walked out and I realized not only did I not have a key, but I didn't have any money, and I was in my nightgown. This is a problem, you know? But not for an alcoholic teenager, not a problem at all. All I had to do was just borrow a dime from some guy on the street and call a friend up, and it just went from there. But I don't know how I got into that. Oh yeah, about loving booze. I did get sick, and I was not the kind of alcoholic that threw up a whole lot. And I think the reason is, well, I'm from the Midwest too. There's something about we Midwesterners, we like to hold our mud. You know what I mean? This past winter, I'm living in this guest house. It's such a godsend where I happened to move to. And this past winter, it's in Venice. It's probably not up to code, but don't tell any of those building guys, please, because I loved staying there. And but the problem was when all the rains came, it flooded there, and there was like this indoor-outdoor carpet that was a part of everything, and it's a very small place. But so in order for me to get to the bedroom, which was about 3 feet away from the dining room, which was about 2 feet away from the kitchen, which was about 2 feet away from the bathroom, I'd have to like walk on this rug because you couldn't pull it up, and this was the sound. Because I was walking in water, you know. So we'd take all the, you know, the towels, and we'd bring the towels, and we got a vacuum. And my landlord, who is also a dear friend who lives in the front, said, Barb, you can just stay up in the attic. We've got this beautiful setup up there. They do, it's beautiful with TV and lovely, and your little doggy can come up there too. And I said, no thank you. I'd like to stay in my house. I'm staying in my house. We Midwesterners, we hold our mud. I was in that house for 10 days before it stopped going, and I'd say, it's just fine, there's no problem here. I just put my boots on when I come in. I walk around in my boots. It's not a problem, okay? How did I get into how we hold our mud? I'm just trying, oh yeah, throwing up, right. So I did get sick at my really good friend Nancy's house. It was about the 4th time I got drunk on Langer's. Can y'all remember Langer's wine? That rosé was supposed to be kind of she and in a brown bottle, sort of a brown. Was supposed to, even that was, oh, thank you, Lance. How could I have forgotten that? Oh my God. Is that brain surgery I had last year? Oh God. So Langer's, not Lancers, that's right. So, oh, Lancers, not Langer. I'm telling you, it is true about this brain surgery. It does change things a little bit. So in any case, drank it down. We were, I don't know, we were having wonderful romantic, you know, 16-year-old talking about the boys and everything, drinking. And I got really sick over her mother's Indian beautiful rug. And she then called my father, who was very upset about it. And I was so ashamed. It was the last time I threw up. So no matter what, I wasn't going to throw up. That's how it was. And I loved wine. I actually loved scotch. I loved all the hard stuff. That stuff was really wonderful, but I kind of went through it really quick in the first couple of years of my drinking, mostly because it got me really drunk, really quick, and I was out of it. I mean, I'd be out of it like in 5 minutes. So I wanted to have some enjoyment as I was drinking. So I ended up being a winette. Loved to drink on the Greyhound bus. That was probably one of the funnest things for me. Get in the back of the Greyhound bus is true existential experience. You'd never know what was going to happen next, you know. Who was coming in, what kind of a party there'd be. Perhaps there might be some drugs, you know. But most important, there was going to be wine in the back. Oh yeah, who you were going to fall in love with for the evening. That was really great too. Actually, I can't tell you, I still love Greyhound buses. I'm too old for that. Hurts my back, you know? I do love those existential experiences to this day. In any case, when I first started drinking, it was wonderful. I felt beautiful. And I was not a very attractive teenager, actually. I was a little lean in the face and long in the nose and small in the eyes, you know. I had a social worker once who said, I lived with my dad like, you know, a few years, but I'd be in foster homes if he didn't have any money. And then I'd be in like really ritzy private schools if he did have money. So it was very different from one year to the next where I was going to be. Well, this was the state school for girls. And I had a social worker. She was really great, but she looked at me, I was about 14, and she said, you know, Barb, you look really good if you like put mascara on, you know, and wear a little makeup. And I looked at her and I said, I already got the mascara on. That's how bad it was, you know. It's just like, oh dear. But boy, I'll tell you, when I took that drink, I was beautiful. I was beautiful. I was a great dancer. I was charming. I could talk to the guys. Everything was just right. I like to share this when I pitch sometimes, that I remember I was at this party. I was about 16. It was sort of a she party in Evanston, Illinois. And I was living in Evanston. My dad moved there so I could get a good schooling, but we weren't the Evanston type. We were more sort of like the downtown Chicago type, you know? And Evanston, by the way, is the home of the women's temperate, WCTU is I think what it is. It's the Temperance Society for that women. It's the national center for that. And up until a few years ago, there was no buying booze in Evanston, Illinois. So of course my father would not be comfortable there. But we did live right on the edge. So he could go to Howard and Paulina and get his booze if he took a little walk. And we were in this apartment that was a little sort of scummy for Evanston. Do you know, Evanston was a lot more she. And it was only filled with that empty refrigerator and a television set and a couch and a bed and a coffee table. And my father grew plants. He loved plants everywhere. But just trying to think, where was I talking about? The WCTU. She, thank you. Barb, you'll have to keep me on track here, okay? So there I was in this kind of she party in Evanston and feeling very much less than. And I took that drink and I felt so wonderful, and I went into the bathroom and looked in the mirror as I was sitting on the pot. You know, it's one of those big mirrors that goes all the way down to, even when you're sitting on the pot, like to your waist. I looked over at myself and I just said, "You're beautiful, Barbara. You are beautiful." I got that, you know, I saw this glow about me. It was just like, yeah, go back out there. Of course I needed alcohol. Alcohol made me feel alive and beautiful and charming, and it took away all that junk on the inside of my stomach that was holding on to my intestines and making them feel bad. Alcohol was smooth, suave. I could dance the night away. It was wonderful. Of course I was going to drink some more, and then some more, and then some more. Now the problem was, this was in the early 60s, and by the time I got out of high school, it was the late 60s, and that was hippie time, right? And I loved the idea of being a hippie. I mean, that was, what was I going to do? Get married and have 2.2 kids in Evanston, Illinois? Oh, it just sounded deadly. What a horrible option. But there were these hippies who were having these wonderful spiritual experiences and, you know, just doing things absolutely against the rules. And I love that. So the problem with hippies is most hippies, you know, love drugs. They love the drugs. This kind, that kind. And I love drugs for dessert. But I really love booze. Booze was my steak and potatoes. And it was not cool to be a hippie who loved booze. It was very cool to do psychedelics and to smoke weed and do stuff like that. I had to hide my booze from my peers. It was very embarrassing. But I succeeded in doing that. And as my 20s went on, what happened was I became more and more dead on the inside. Something on the inside. Whatever light happened, you know, that I had when I was looking at that mirror, whatever light God gave me, you know, when I was born, was just getting really dim. Dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. Until when I was 29, that's when I got sober. I was living in, actually it wasn't a bad place, it had a beautiful view. It was a little single apartment. It was pretty stinky, you know, smelled of unmade beds and wine bottles. I was into recycling as well, so it was really a drag. I had to save all those wine bottles and try and find a way to get the wine bottles out to the recycling center. Doing this without driving in Los Angeles was definitely a challenge, I must tell you. I was in Green Bay, Wisconsin for a year when I was about 24, and that's where I kind of got involved in the recycling thing. I was living in the attic in the upstairs of a very lovely, lovely husband and wife who lived downstairs, and they were into recycling too. And there was a little side room, and I just didn't know, you know, I just didn't want them to know how much I drank. So what I would do is I'd take my bottles and just put them in the side room. And I stayed there for about a year. And when I left, I just had no idea how I was going to just take these bottles out. So I just left them there, you know? So here I moved from this place in Green Bay, Wisconsin, probably with about 300 bottles, empty bottles for them to put into their recycling center. Such a gift, huh? Oh, God. In any case, I didn't think that I was physically ill, even though I heard that alcohol could kill you and that it was a lethal disease. But I really didn't think that it was hurting me at all. I did know something, and that it was killing me on the inside, that there was something in my spirit that was going, 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 and going. So I ended up really, I mean, a lot of people didn't know I had any trouble. I was 29 working as a file clerk in a nonprofit organization. I had fully developed my potential, as you can tell, and shaking like a leaf most of the time, coming home and drinking every night. Drinking every night. The last 2 weeks of my drinking, I became a periodic in that I drank every other night instead of every night because I just could not handle it anymore. I could not handle it. I remember I went to my first meeting in November of 1976, and it hit me, do you know? It hit me, and I think one of the reasons it did is because the look in the people's faces, the light in their eyes, was something that sparked on the inside for me. That was the light that I wanted back. But the thing is, I knew that in order to be a part of Alcoholics Anonymous, I was going to have to sooner or later quit drinking. And that was like, what an order. I can't go through with it. But I did love the way you were. I loved your voices. I loved the women with their open arms and their welcoming spirits. I did not know women to be that way. And I kept coming to meetings every so often, once every 2 weeks or so. I knew there was something happening here, and I wanted it. I just wasn't willing to go to any lengths to get it. It was on May the 3rd, 1977, when I called up central office after having had a drink of, wasn't a drink, it was one of those fifths or quarts of an 18%er, like vermouth or port, I still can't remember which one. And it was gone, and it was like 7:15 at night. I was just sitting there just going, now what do I do, you know? Well, I could go down and get some more booze, but oh man, I'm so tired. So I got this great idea. I'll call up central office. If I call up central office, what'll happen is they'll, you know, get somebody to pick me up and take me to a meeting tomorrow night. And then I'll spend all tonight thinking about going to the meeting tomorrow night. That's something to do. And maybe I could get another like fifth or something like that while I think about it. Well, that's a good way to spend the evening. So I called central office up. I said, I'd like to go to a meeting tomorrow night. And the guy, of all things, said, why don't you go tonight? And I went, I can't go tonight. And he said, why? And I said, I told him the truth. I said, because I'm drunk. He was so great. He said, how do you think that alcoholics get to Alcoholics Anonymous? They can't stop drinking. So of course you can go to a meeting. Now give me your telephone number and I'll have somebody call you up and take you to a meeting. For some reason, I gave him that number. That's why whenever I see a drunk walk in, you know, to a meeting, it's like, I don't care how that drunk smells, because that's how I smelled when I walked into that meeting. It's like, honey, come sit down here. Yeah, listen. Unless he makes too much noise or she, you know, starts yelling and screaming, I just say, shut up and listen. Or I say, Joe, come over here and take care of that. But I love it when drunks who are drunk come to meetings, because this is the language of the heart. And even though I was in a brownout that night, I can't remember hardly anything that happened. My heart heard. It heard very clearly what was going on. And for some reason that night, I was willing. It was beautiful. Well, it wasn't so beautiful. You know, I smelled, I came home, I was like, you know, everything was a mess. I was a mess. The next day I was just as shaky as could possibly be. But it was beautiful in the long run, because that was the moment, you know, of the spiritual experience. I absolutely adore the fact that we come and find God broken, you know? I don't think there was any other way that I could have found God. I had to come and find my higher power totally broken in half. I actually had to come and find my higher power hopeless. A lot of people talk about hope as being a really important and wonderful thing. For me, it was the hopelessness that set me up. I needed to be hopeless, to have no other options and no other answers, to be willing to try another way, you know. And for some reason, probably a lot of different reasons. In fact, I'll tell you some of the reasons. I haven't had to drink since May the 3rd, 1977. It's the most amazing thing. It's actually 23 years, not 24. That's coming up in a couple of months. But for me, I think what was incredibly important was to be able to get a higher power, a power greater than myself. And when I first came here, I actually did. I had one of those like zonked spiritual experiences the night that I got sober on May the 3rd. And it was, you know, I saw light, I felt forgiveness, It was absolutely incredible. It was like one of those dramatic kind of deals. And I went, whoa, I have seen God or been on acid, one or the other. It was just really quite beautiful. But what was interesting is that isn't the God that I then chose. The God that was filled with light and gave me so much forgiveness. The God that I needed to choose at the time. I remember sharing this in Chicago about 8 years into my sobriety when my dad was so sick. And I was at meetings a great deal. And I talked about my higher power, my first higher power being a tree. And the people from Chicago said, it's okay, she's from California, you know. But the truth is, for me, being from the Midwest, is, you know, those deciduous trees, they are always perfect. They're always beautiful. You know, in the springtime, there's flowers on the trees, and you go, oh, God, beautiful tree. In the summertime, it's lush and green, and you go, God, this is a beautiful tree. In the autumn, you know, everything is turning like beautiful golden or red colors, and you go, this is a beautiful tree. However, if I were a tree and it was autumn and my leaves were turning a funny color, I might go, shit, this is getting pretty scary here. What's this all about? Do you know? And then in the winter, there's this bare tree, you know, and I go, God, there's a bare tree here. Even bones, in the bones of the tree. It is beautiful. It's exactly what it's supposed to be. But if I were that tree, I'd go, it's over. Do you know? I'm in trouble here. I'm dead. But that's not God's plan for this tree, because what's going to happen is spring's going to happen, and the tree is going to get the flowers again. It's going to get green again. And truthfully, I believe that's what's happened for me again and again and again and again in sobriety. I'm having a hard time talking this evening because I'm going through, even though, you know, a lot of people say you can't feel fear and love at the same time, or fear and faith at the same time. I'm one of those ones that goes on nanoseconds. 1 nanosecond, I feel absolutely connected to my higher power. And the next, I feel, lately is how it's been for me, I feel desperate to find some order, desperate to find some connection. I might talk about that in a little bit, but just to let you know that that first concept of a higher power, which was a tree, worked for me, was really important. And then for whatever reason, that higher power, the one with the blue eyes and the white hair and the stern face that was, you know, making a list and checking it twice, you know, that higher power came up, that judgmental God who was a man who was, you know, came up. Now, I wasn't even raised, you know, like Pentecostal or Christian, really. I was a Christian Scientist. They're really easygoing when it comes to higher powers. But somehow, in my psyche, I had to walk through that fearful God until my sponsor said, you know, Barb, I'd like to ask you to do this. I'd like you to write. If you had a God, whatever God you would ever want, whatever one you'd ever want, just write it down. See what it comes out to be. And I chose a God that was extraordinarily loving and present and there not only for me, but for other people as well. And I read it to her, and she said, there you go. You got your higher power. That was very beautiful. Over the years, just so many wonderful things have happened in that I also went back to school, and it was really good, as did Barb. You know, we're just like, you know, sisters and brothers who go back to school. We just kind of celebrate each other a semester at a time. It's so beautiful. Like, I went back to Santa Monica College at the age of 34 or 35 or something. I was a little bit older than the rest of the crew, but every so often I'd see somebody that was my age, and a lot of times they were also sober. It was like, hey, we're passing. But And we have brain damage too. But what's really incredible is most alcoholics that go back to school get A's. It's because we're so anal retentive, we're such perfectionists. We grow. I had to grow. Finally, by the time I got finished with school a few years later, I got like a B minus, you know, and that was like my growth not to be a perfectionist, you know. Oh, I pity the poor people that were around me when I went to school. But as a result of going to school, many things opened for me, beautiful pathways. And I ended up working in HIV and AIDS, which is actually very much a blessing. There's a story about two social workers that are talking to each other, Sue and Ann, and Sue says to Ann, well, what field of social work do you work in? And Ann says, I work in child abuse. And Sue goes, oh my God, what a terrible thing you work in. And she goes, no, it's not really so terrible. It's really beautiful and deep and dear. I'm so glad. And then she says, well, what kind of social work are you working in? And she says, I work in AIDS. And the child abuse social worker says, you work in AIDS? Oh my God, what a horrible place to work. And the social worker in AIDS says, no, it's really, really beautiful. And for me, that's been my experience, is that there were, and still are, moments of deep pain, and also moments of tremendous grace. You see God everywhere in AIDS. It's amazing. Just when you think you see godlessness, you see God. And I see God. And so that's been a great privilege for me. But what was amazing also is that a couple years ago, I had a series of illnesses that were pretty serious. And yet in so many ways, because of my program, and watching other people walk through the vicissitudes of life, I had role models, people who had walked through serious illness, and I admired the way that they did it, and I asked them how they did it. At the Tri-God meeting that a lot of us kind of have gone to at different times on Friday night, there's a woman named Susie. Susie's had Parkinson's, she's had cancer, her husband's had cancer. You need to just go on and on with the thing. And this woman has this incredible spirit and this beauty. I watched how Susie did that. And so that when I got cancer, I was able to, you know, watch my role models. I was able to really walk through it with tremendous fear, but also finding myself even more connected to a God, you know. And this was a God that wasn't just going to bless me with good health. This was a God where there could be a God even if I had bad health. And that was really beautiful. My higher power, I love this, I didn't hear this until about 6 months ago, was no longer this celestial butler that would come in, you know, and help me out just at the right time. Or no longer the one that would make me the chosen person, you know, where always good things would happen to me. My higher power actually then sort of transformed into a buddy, you know, that was saying, well, girl, now we got something else to go through here, you know? And I want you to know this, Barbara Joe, you are never going to be alone. And for me, I think that was something that was really, really beautiful. The feeling of always being connected with this loving God. So there were some other illnesses that happened after that, but most recently, my partner of many years decided that we got married. I was in a relationship with a woman, so it's not a legal marriage, but it was a marriage in our hearts and a ceremony. And she needed to leave. And it was an experience that was as painful as the health problems that I had, probably more painful, because it was an affair of the heart. And alcoholics, when things of the heart happen, we're deeply, deeply affected, I think. And that's probably been one of the hardest things for me. she's also an alcoholic, and it has been really hard knowing how to be, and also working with deep resentment, and also working with a lot of pain, you know. So thank God for my sponsor, who is very, very clear. Thank God for my friends who have helped me again and again. I actually almost drank a couple of times this year. And I'm telling you that because I think it's important for people to understand. And it may or may not be your experience if you have 20 years and plus, but that there are some of us who have a great deal of time where alcohol is, you know, will for a moment be an option, or for an hour be an option, because this is a cunning, baffling, powerful, and patient disease. She just hangs out right next to me wherever I go. I got God on one side, I got my ism on the other, you know. Reminds me of the, you know, the little angel on this and the devil on this. But it's not quite so, you know, black and white there. But, you know, it's like my ism will give me many, many different reasons in a very subtle, intelligent, social worky kind of way. You know, use all the language of AA and end up with the end of the sentence being, so you might as well drink. And for me, I have to stay really close to this program right now because it is a painful place that I'm in. And I feel so blessed. I feel so deeply blessed. Because what I'm finding is an ever deeper connection with my higher power and an ever deeper connection with the 12 steps. Because I have to then go to my inventory or to my 10th step. I have to go to my sponsor and be of service with the women that I sponsor as well and go to meetings. So just to let you know, I finally went to Al-Anon too, and that was really good. I mean, I've been piddling around with Al-Anon because there's alcoholics everywhere around me, you know, family, everything. And I've always thought, oh, isn't this nice? An alcoholic goes into Al-Anon. You know, yes, and, you know, but I got to tell you, it is a kick-ass program. And it is, I've had a second surrender. I don't want to go into that because everybody's got a different story. But it's been a second surrender for me, and it's deepened my connection to my higher power and where I have power and control and where I don't, you know. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I love it even when I feel vulnerable and weak. I love the loving arms of AA. And thank you for asking me to speak.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So Pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.